Hello friends, Bill in the shop here, and this is the assembly instructional video for the Rattler kit that I have. The files are on our website. It's I think 32 files in total, and they're split out by the different colors mostly, or different functional parts here. I've printed them in different colors here on my FDM machine just because it's fun. But if you were gonna put a full prop together, you probably want to sand and paint everything before you get to this assembly step. Like I mentioned, I printed this on my FDM machine. It came out great. I've also printed it on my resin machine. This is the one that I sanded and painted. Of course, it's got the mechanism here for reloading, and it turned out really well. So whether you have an FDM or a resin machine, it'll print just fine. Now, of course, you could just glue all these pieces together. Some of them do need glue, but I've made the kit in a way that most of it goes together with screws. If you don't have screws, you can just glue it all together. You're going to need some tools for clamping pieces together. You'll need some tape. I also use my power drill quite a bit for making holes a little bigger and for tapping. A rotary tool or a sander is really useful, especially for shortening screws, which we'll have to do a little bit of. And of course, for tapping, we'll need a set of metric drill bits, an M2, M3, and M6 specifically. For gluing, I have a two-part epoxy here. You could also use super glue. Of course, you'll need a little sandpaper for roughing up some of the glued surfaces, and you'll need some sort of screwdriver for screwing all the parts together. I'll have a full list of all the screws that you need to put this together, so you can go just check the link there. But like I said, some of them will need to be shortened. So for example, these ones go through the grips on the front, and they need to be shortened so that they don't meet in the middle. They go through right through here, and we don't want those meeting in the middle. So those need to be shortened a bit. You can shorten it right on your, with your rotary tool, or a sander, like a belt sander works really, really well. 4 of these M2 screws here are going to be used to actually screw the barrel in place. They need to be shortened just a little bit, just a millimeter or two. I like to round the ends of those over so that they're nice and pretty. And then a bunch more of these M2s are just decorative. So I cut them really short with a pair of bolt cutters, and then I grinded the ends flat so they're nice and pretty. There's some M3s in there in various lengths. There are a couple of 3mm or 1/8 inch pins that get cut down to about 15 millimeters long. Those are just going to be alignment pins. And then a big honkin' M6 screw to attach the suppressor. Again, there will be a list of all of these with the printing instructions that come with your files. You'll just have to do some shortening. The first thing we need to do is enlarge some of the holes. We're going to do all the through holes. These are holes where a screw will pass through them without getting screwed in. Now, due to shrinkage with whatever printer or plastic you're using, or an elephant's foot, or perhaps there's some support material down in there, you may have to take a slightly oversized drill bit and very carefully drill that out so that your screw will fit through it. It'll fit through it right there without resistance. So that's what we want. So there's the M6 ones here. We want to make sure that they can pass through these foregrip pieces. And then same with the suppressor. There's a through hole right in there. We want to make sure is nice and cleared out for that big M6 bolt. There we go. That's what we want, nice and loose. There are quite a few M3 screws that need through holes. So I've got a drill bit just slightly bigger than an M3 screw, and I'll go through and enlarge a couple of those holes. So we have these two, that one. Also, the 2 holes in the rear grips on either side. This hole right here, these 2 holes right here, these 2 holes right here. And there's 2 of these switches. One of them is a little bigger, but the smaller one needs to get drilled out a little bit, very carefully. And again, this is so that our M3 screws can pass through like that and give a little bit of wiggle room. There's a couple more on these knobs here. Probably want to use some pliers for that. And that's it for the M3 screws. Let's do the M2s next. There are only 4 M2 holes that need to be through holes. The 2 on this side and the 2 on this side. These are actually going to screw through there into the barrel. There's actually some support material in there. So if I drill them out, There we go. Hopefully now our M2s can fit in there without, there we go, without being too snug. The rest of the M2 screws are all decorative, and I've cut those ones really short so I don't have to screw them in a ton, and then I ground them down so that they're nice and pretty, while these four I let remain a little bit longer so they can screw into the barrel. There are also these two sets of holes in the slide and the frame here. You'll need to drill those out so they're big enough to accept our pins. And these are just to align everything when you're gluing them together. Just want to make sure that they are big enough that these can go in nice and snug. Just like that. Next, we're going to do our tapping, and the metric tap set I have here also comes with the corresponding drill bit. So for all of our M3s, I'm going to drill those out to 2.5 millimeters before I do the tapping, and this will just get them to exactly the right size. So for everything that needs to get tapped, we'll first drill it out with the appropriate size drill bit. And then we'll use the tap, this is the M3 tap, we'll use the tap to go in and add threads. But I found that using a little water as lubricant can be really handy. Just slowly go in and out. That gives us a nice threaded hole. In this case, that's for screwing in the grips. So we'll go and do that to all of the M3 holes. That's these two for the grips. There's two here. This one you might need to screw in by hand because it's hard to get a drill in there. These two need to be tapped as an M3. This hole is an M3. This one, and this one are M3s. And then the two holes on the bottom of these tubes here also need to be tapped as an M3. Now you want to be careful drilling and tapping these holes here. There isn't a lot of material around them, so it's easy for it to get too warm from the drill bit. This is why having lubrication helps. Keep it cool and keep it moving. So you just want to take it nice and slow. Make sure you get that cleared out to the right diameter. Gonna add a little more water for tapping. You also have to be careful when you're tapping plastic parts. If this goes all the way to the bottom and bottoms out, it will rip the threads apart. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we're just going to, again, go very slowly and carefully. Even back it out a little bit. Clear away the chips, and then slowly make our way in. There we go, that should be nice and tapped. Next are the M2s. The only two I'm going to actually tap are the two on this barrel. I've got the appropriate size drill bit for an M2 tap. So I'll just drill those out, again making sure there's no support material in there. Then we can grab our M2 tap and tap them from both sides. Again, I want to use water on this just to keep it nice and cool and make sure it doesn't melt and make the hole too big, which has happened before. So nice and slowly. And I'll do that for all four of these holes. The rest of these M2 holes here, I've found, since they're just decorative, I could take one of these shortened M2 screws and just screw it right in, and it will cut its own thread. If it doesn't, or if it gets stripped, you can actually go in and just super glue it. Again, these are decorative, they're not holding anything in place. So I'm not even gonna bother drilling and tapping those. The last bit of tapping are the M6s. There's one here. So of course we will start by drilling that hole out with the correct size bit. And of course there's another one inside the barrel that will get tapped. That's for holding on the suppressor. We will make sure that is widened a bit. Then we'll swap over to our tap, add a little lubrication, and we will tap those holes. Want to make sure that they go straight through a nice perpendicular angle. There's that one. And then there's one down in there. There we go. That is all the tapping done. We can start screwing in some of these parts. I'm going to start with all these decorative M2 screws. Like I said, these can just get screwed straight into the plastic, no tapping necessary. They're just meant to look pretty. There's a whole bunch of them. So any of the screw holes that are this size, except for these two and these two, those all get decorative screws. And there's one hiding on here as well. There's also two more on the front here. Make sure you don't miss those. That's all the decorative screws applied. Next, we'll drill or screw in our barrel. That goes in here with 4 more of those M2 screws. Like I said, those got shortened just a little bit so that they don't meet in the middle, but they should just be able to pass right through into the holes that we tapped. And there we go. We'll just screw in all 4 of those. Next, we can screw the knobs on the ends of these tubes here. These are just these 10mm M3 screws. They get threaded right into those holes that we tapped earlier. Just like that. Now we're ready to do some gluing, but first we want to sand the surfaces that are going to get glued. So this whole surface here is going to get glued. Easiest way to do that is just to run it on a piece of sandpaper like this. Just until it's scuffed up and there's enough tooth for the glue to grab onto. And then of course the same with this. You can sand the back of that. Of course it'd be easier to do that before you screw this in. But we can just scuff that up by hand. Like so. A couple other spots in here, you might want to scuff that up a little bit for gluing. And then the pegs on our handguard, those get glued, and it would probably be a good idea to scuff those up a little as well. For the gluing, I have a 2-part 5-minute epoxy here. It gives us plenty of working time to put it together. The first big piece is going to be the top here, and we'll put our pegs in first to make sure that it's all aligned. And this will go on there. Nice. Put on a little glue. Piece gets put on. There's a little squeeze out. We can clean that up. And then we'll want to use our tape to hold that all together while it cures. We still have some glue, so we can glue on a few more parts. Do these side tube thingies here. Those also get taped down. And we can glue this part in as well. That will also get the tape treatment. There's also this little bit that gets slid right into there. We can glue that in place now. That probably doesn't need any tape. That can just chill. There's also a couple of little decorative pieces on here. This will just need the tiniest amount of glue for the tiniest little parts. While I'm at it, I can probably get the trigger in there. Although our 5 minutes is coming up here pretty soon. Just a little glue. And I just want to make sure that I don't put this in backwards. There we go, nice and snug. There are a few more pieces to glue, but I'm gonna mix up another batch of 5-minute epoxy to do those. The first round of glue has cured. We've got the second batch ready to go with just a couple of other parts. Again, just making sure this is mixed nice and thoroughly. We're going to do this arrangement here. It's 3 parts, and we'll put just a little glue right inside of there. Taking care not to get any glue elsewhere. Just need a little bit to hold this peg in place. This peg goes through this knob here, and it will eventually spin freely on it. But it's going to go in this slot and then pushed into the place where we put that glue. And the axle should make contact with the glue like that. And then this cap will pin the other side. We'll get it lined up. Just like that. This should still be able to spin. We can put just a tiny bit of glue in there to hold that in place. I pry that out a little bit. Sneak in just a little dab of glue. Press it closed. Wipe away the extra. And that should keep this pinned, but also able to still spin. Just a little more glue right here for this little decorative switch thing. And there's one on either side. That just gets pressed in place. Then on the top we have the foresight. Again, just a tiny little bit of glue there. Just want to make sure this gets put on straight. Also not backwards. There we go, that looks good. And then the rear sight slides on to just about there. So we'll slide it back, put a little glue on, and then slide it forward again. Just a little, it's pretty tight, so you just need a little glue on either side. Then we just slide that forward. And let that cure, just about like that. Once that round of glue is dry, we can start screwing in other parts like the grips. These should be nice and simple since we've just tapped some holes for them. We can just screw them in with the appropriate screws from either side. Those go in with those M6s. These go in with 2 different lengths of M3s. Shorter one back here, longer one up here. Up next, we can screw in this guy here. So this piece goes in there. This piece goes on top of it with a pair of M3s that screw through both of them. Nice and snug. Now it's time to assemble the magazine. Got all these fun parts here. We'll start with the little locking mechanism. You will need a spring, and I'll have this listed with the materials. This goes in this little slot here, and there's a hole that it should nest down into. And then the latch here goes over that. You'll have to compress it a little bit to snug it down in there, but it should go over it there and just have a little bit of spring for you. And to keep that in, this latch with the bigger hole goes on this side, and then you put a screw in there, one of these 10mm long M3s. Should look like this. They have just a little bit of spring action for releasing the magazine. The other one goes on the other side. This one is decorative though. It's not meant to move at all, so it can get screwed down. You can even glue it in place if you want. I'm just gonna screw it in like that. This is the one that does the work. Now we can get the rest of these pieces put together with the rest of our screws. These go straight through. The top 2 attach to this one. We'll get everything loosely attached before we cinch it all down. Those are almost cinched all the way down. This slides in like that. So we can screw this one into the bottom. And then this one goes through the top all the way down and through. And that gives us the whole sort of magazine assembly. And if we've done everything correctly, this should slide on there and lock into place. And it does. And when I press this, it releases it for reloading. Last piece of assembly is the suppressor. You just have one long M6 screw that goes through there, and that threads into the hole we tapped inside the barrel. Just want to make sure it's nice and centered. There we go. That is our thing. This knob still spins, and our magazine comes off like that. So there it is. That's the assembly for the Rattler. All the 3D print files linked down below. You can go get those for yourself. And like I said, all the tools and materials we use will be listed as well. So go grab your files, print it out, and have fun. Thanks for watching.